So if you are joining this conversation, this is a part of a series we're doing on the Love First podcast, and we're talking specifically about awareness and advocacy in regard to disabilities and special needs. And so you're going to get to enjoy some awesome conversations. And this evening, you can see that I have 5 wonderful friends from our church that are going to help us talk about this and walk through this. So what I'm going to do this evening is I'm going to start for my view of the screen. I'm going to start with Millie. And Millie, if you just introduce yourself, and then I'll call to each one of you, and you can introduce yourselves as we go.
Love first, I know. Love first, I know. Lord, take control. Lord, take control. Love first in my soul. Love first in my soul. Lord, take control. Lord, take control.
Hi, my name is Millie Brabham, and my husband David and I have been at North Atlanta for the past 3 years. We have 2 boys, a 9-year-old Briley, who is going into 4th grade, and then we have our sweet little Brady, and he's going to be 8 in July. And Brady is on the autism spectrum, and with that comes a lot of joy, but also some pretty significant challenges. And thank you for being willing to join in this conversation with us. It means so much to me and my family.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Brandon?
Hi, I'm Brandon Gibbs. I've been at North Atlanta for about 6 years now, and I have cerebral palsy, and I've got 34 years of experience to share tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Donna?
Hi, I'm Donna Jordan. I've been with North Atlanta pretty much for the past 5 years. And I have 3 young boys, 12, 10, and 7, and they've all been diagnosed as being on the autistic spectrum.
So you are a busy, busy mom.
Yes, always.
And Connie?
Hi, I'm Connie Bates, and I've been a member of North Atlanta for about 30 years now. And my daughter has been diagnosed with Down syndrome. Her name is Valencia, and Valencia is 37 years old now. And I am very fortunate to have care for her. So the last time we met, she was with me, but not today.
Okay.
So.
And thank you. Okay. And Jennifer?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Williams. I've been at North Atlanta for close to 4 years now. And I also have cerebral palsy from birth due to a stroke at birth, and have lived with that all of my life. I've also joined the disability world through being a speech pathologist for the last now 13 years.
Wow.
And I have worked in the public and hospitals, and also in a Christian school in Guatemala.
Wow. Wow. Well, Jennifer, would you mind just maybe sharing with us a little bit about your personal experience? And you can dip into both worlds, but your personal experience with disability.
That's a loaded question. So like I said, it began from birth, where I had a right side hemiparesis due to the stroke at birth. So I've always had a physical disability that has limited my my ability to move and everything. I am able to walk and do most everything for myself, but it's included everything from physical therapy to occupational therapy all of my life. And then I've always seen it as a blessing in a lot of ways, because the verse, in Corinthians about where I am weak, then I am strong. And so I've always seen it as something that God has blessed me with, actually, because it's made me stronger, and people ask if I want to take it away, and it's really a part of me. And so, yes, I've struggled with, looking a certain way or not being able to do certain things, but it's always been a blessing to me. So that's my own journey with it. And then I started looking for careers in college and ended up finding this career of speech pathology where I was able to help people with disabilities. And so ended up working in that field, working with children with autism, Down syndrome, a variety of disabilities. And in 2012, that led me to Guatemala, where I found a school for children with disabilities there and worked there for 4 years, and was able to start a mom support group for the children, and just also provide therapy for all of the children there. So I have a pretty wide gamut of just knowledge and, just getting to experience disabilities through my own eyes and through other people's eyes.
Yeah. And you're a new mom.
I am a new mom, yes. And that's a whole nother experience.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so let's take a moment and let's start talking just for a few moments about support. For instance, Connie, when you heard her say that she started a mom's support group, right? What does support look like? What does it feel like? Good support.
Well, first of all, I have to talk about it. I think one of the most astounding things I found out is that because I was very young and didn't understand politics and how governments work, all states are not equal. So I had Valencia in Oregon. That's where she was born. We were living there temporarily. And the support from her birth was fantastic and immediate, almost immediate, helping turnover and all kinds of things that she really needs to have. Then we moved to Milwaukee, and again, the support was phenomenal. This is a short period of time because Valencia was born September 29th. We moved back to Milwaukee shortly after she was born, and then we came here in '84. So to come here to Georgia and not find the services that I really did expect was just devastating for me. And I was talking to my mom about this today, telling her we were going to have this meeting. We had to send Valencia back to Milwaukee for a year so that she could start school because they wouldn't let her start here. So there was nothing for her here. So my mom was telling me I remember how wonderful it was, but she said even the support of someone from the school would come into the student's home.
Wow.
To see their environment and ask, what can we do for you and supporting you? So that's one thing that support looks like. I'm devastated that there's not enough financial support anymore because it's sorely needed. The support is so many different things, even counseling for parents, even siblings, because everybody's going through this thing together.
Wow.
So there's just a few of the support chains that need to be there, not to mention the psychological, the medical, and the support groups.
Yeah. So Millie, I saw you nodding your head. What was resonating as Connie was talking?
The regional support as well, like services that are available. We moved to South Georgia, actually Brunswick, when Brady had just turned 1. And so that's where the whole diagnosis process happened. And I was driving an hour 3 to 4 times a week, both ways to Savannah for him to have therapy, behavioral therapy for help, even the diagnosis process, which we were on a waiting list for 8 months. And then we were having to also drive to Jacksonville, Florida, which is an hour from Brunswick. And then by the time we had all that taken care of and we were sort of in a routine with everything, and he aged out of the Babies Can't Wait program, the early intervention state program, and then we were thrown into the public school program that was not, unfortunately, was not well equipped. And I thought to myself, I am able to work part-time and am capable because David is supportive, and I had neighbors that were supportive to drive Brady an hour to therapy. There were so many of his peers in his classroom that were not able to do anything extra, and it broke my heart. Actually, when we got to Atlanta, I told multiple people at Marcus Autism Center, I'm like, y'all have a responsibility. You're only north of Macon. There's a whole rest of the state south of Macon that is just desperate for services. So that is that type of support that is desperately needed. I so agree with you, Connie. We've only journeyed through this in Georgia, so I don't know what other states' perks would look like.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting, because my feeling is that a lot of people who are observing, even with an empathetic heart, some of the things you all will talk about this evening, I mean, it's a real awakening. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't even think of that. That's not any part of my personal experience. I think is how some people will experience. Other people will be like, that's my family. That's my life. Donna, what is it like when you hear them use phrases that are common in disability circles, aging out? Aging from out of one program to a next. You have 3,
Yes.
right? So can you tell us a little bit about your unique journey?
Sure. Well, again, I have 3. Gavin is my 7-year-old. If you hear him in the background, he's decided to crash the interview. And then I have Xavier, who is now 10, and Stephen, who is 12. Mm-hmm. Gavin is I guess you could say, least functional. Mm-hmm. He does not communicate verbally very well. He didn't really speak until, I would say, probably 6 or 5. But I will say that my journey has been, I was fortunate to have a lot of support within the school system. I have little support outside of that because I really just don't have, my need is really for someone to watch them because I don't get a break. I'm a single mom. So, but in terms of the school, the teachers are always willing, asking if they can do anything for us. Gavin was diagnosed first, and then Xavier, who's 10, he was having some anger difficulties at school, which manifested in a very violent way. Mm-hmm. So he could have easily been expelled, but the principal of his elementary school really took a liking to him. Wow. And fortunately, where maybe another principal would have expelled him, he was maybe sent home for a 1-day suspension or something of that nature. Yeah. So he eventually was able to change schools. That was, I'd say, probably the most difficult. No, Gavin, the most difficult part, because in his version of ASD, of course, no 2 are the same. So he is his aggression and the anger made it very difficult for him to have a productive day at school. So I'm getting calls like multiple days. I think the turning point was only maybe last year, May, when we were able to find a medication that worked. We had to try different dosages and versions, but we did find something that pretty much allowed him to control his anger. Mm. So, but prior to that, the 3 years had been very difficult. Mm. And then on top of that, then we have Stephen, who is 12, and Stephen is the most functional, I would say, out of the 3. He just started junior high last year. Oh. He's going to grade.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I let him know. His support, he has I'm not sure exactly what her title is, but she's pretty much a liaison between subject teachers and his IEP program, individual. So she provides support inside the class, but every person that we've encountered, they've just been so helpful. I know it's God, and I know it's a blessing
Come on.
because I've heard other stories. Like Xavier, for as angry as he can be, everybody loves him. Even at North Atlanta, when he first came, it was very difficult, but everybody just supported us and stuck with us. It was amazing. I really didn't expect that when I first came. But yeah, from each teacher, maybe even willing to come out and see him on the weekend to try to calm him down, or we just had a lot of support, and I'm very thankful for it.
That's incredible. And you highlight something, Dana, that I also want to kind of put a little bit of a pin in right now and then return to it.
Okay.
But the idea of, emotional and physical aggressiveness, sometimes the way we frame that has to be has to be transformed when we're talking about someone with disabilities or special needs or a developmental disability.
Exactly.
And for a lot of us, that equipping has not ever happened. And so sometimes when people are observing it and watching it, they are not relating to what's actually happening, right? So I think that's profound.
His teacher would often say she would love for everyone to see the kind, loving boy that she does instead of that initial rage, because that's, of course, what many people would judge him on.
Yeah. So something that some of you have highlighted for me, and some of the research that I've been working on for the last year kind of, articulates that not only are there kind of different families of disabilities like physical or developmental and so on, mental and intellectual disabilities, but of course there's also a spectrum, right? And these are as diverse as any other imaginable population on earth, right? So Brandon, could you walk us through a little bit just your own journey, right? Because you've heard these other conversations, right?
Yeah.
But you lived it.
Mm-hmm.
So walk us through a little bit of your personal journey.
The beginning of my story is pretty similar to Jennifer's because I had a stroke at birth too, and cerebral palsy, and then as an infant and into elementary, middle, and high school, I saw physical therapists, occupational therapists. We went through that route. We did it through private clinics and the school system as well, and the hospital system. And we eventually, I had some surgeries too to fix some things. And so, yeah.
So
go ahead.
Help us a little bit with, maybe, because this is something only you can answer.
Yeah.
What were some of the things you experienced maybe in elementary school? Because, Dana mentioned the ages of her children, elementary school and then middle school and then high school. And what were some things that you went through?
In elementary school, that's where I was getting my physical therapy through the school. And they would pull me out of class and I'd work on me, and they even brought me to the special needs class a few times so I could interact with those kids some, and did recess with them. A lot of the kids would be like, "What's wrong with your hand?" and "Why do you walk weird?" And some of them were jerks about it, and some of them were nice about it. And the ones who were nice became my friends. And so yeah.
When you went to college,
Yeah.
what happened then?
Let me think. Everyone was pretty much adult about the whole situation. There were some hey, do you mind if I ask you what's wrong with your hand? And I remember someone asking me, "Are you all right?" They thought I was I had broken my foot or something. And I was like,
Huh.
limping or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone was pretty much adult about it at that age.
Yeah.
So it was like, yeah.
So I noticed that Jennifer was nodding while you were speaking. So Jennifer, what were you hearing?
Hear the same thing that happened to me. Lots, and even now, and people are doing it genuinely to say, hey, I want to make sure you're okay. And I think growing up with a disability, at least for me, it makes you a little defensive in terms of, I'm fine. I can do this on my own.
Yeah.
Let me do it. Because
Yeah.
I grew up with, you have to overcome, and you want to do it yourself, just as my 6-month-old is wanting to do everything herself. So I think, I've come to realize and be okay with the fact that people are asking it. And, still a lot of times I'm like, no, I'm fine. Thank you. Don't help me. And sometimes I'll take the help. But I think that, it's just a genuine human thing for people to just be like, hey, I want to make sure you're okay. But I think for somebody with a disability, it's sometimes it's just, it's like, I'm fine. I can do it myself. So, it's something you kind of have to struggle with. Like, I need help sometimes, and that's okay, so.
Yes. One of the documentaries that a friend of this group, Phil Woody, had me watch, there was a lot of stress about that, about the difference between approaching someone with a disability from the angle of what they can't do, which, of course, depending on the disability, that's a little bit inevitable, right? But what they noticed was when they were in settings that were specifically geared toward the success and opportunities of people with disabilities, then all the emphasis was on, well, what can you do? What are you able to do? And leaning into that. And it was pretty profound, the impact of living in a world where nearly everyone was thinking about what you couldn't do versus living in a world where people were actually really excited to see you grow into what you could do. I want to shift our conversation slightly and spend a little time on this question. Why don't we do this? Millie, why don't you start us off on this question? What do you wish people knew? Like I know because of the conversation and the preparation for our conversation that everyone here, loves their family and loves, has a beautiful attitude toward life and all of that, which is true. But the world with disabilities is also a world that has been, to a great degree, ignored by the general public, behind the scenes by the general public. And this is not new. I mean, this is from the beginning. So what I'd ask us to do is pull the curtain back a little bit. And what do you wish people knew about either working with, like in Jennifer's case, someone with disabilities, being someone with a disability, as Brandon and Jennifer both described, or being a caretaker, a mother, a family member? Let's talk about that. So Millie, we'll start with you, then Donna, and then Connie.
I could talk forever about this question. Brady's autism and Brady's case is basically invisible looking. He physically looks like a typical child. And so Brady can also be pretty aggressive, so I can empathize. And that's not easy for me to talk about. I struggle with saying that because I'm working through that because I have this guilt of, I don't want people to think that that's what Brady is. Because like Xavier, Brady is the most precious child. I mean, I adore him. I just want to kiss his little cheeks 24/7 and scoop him up. And anyways, but it's hard because when he acts out and when we're out in public, when he screams because he stims, which is those repetitive movements or behaviors, Brady screams with his stimming. So it's very disruptive. It's loud. And the looks, the comments I have gotten over the years have led me to, I just resolve into tears when I get home in the shower by myself. And that's been really hard. So that invisible looking disability in Brady's case. The other thing from a personal standpoint is it's so lonely. Can't always go places. We have to pick and choose where our energy is. Some days I'm so exhausted, honestly, that I just can't even imagine participating in a family activity through church, or even getting up and going to church some days just takes it all out of me. And then you have a lot of guilt. So I think there's just this cycle that maybe some of you all can like relate to, where, you know, you have this guilt feeling, and then prayer and support comes for a while, for a time. Somebody enters your life for a minute, and then they're in it for a minute, and then it's tiring. So then they kind of back out. So then you're back to this cycle. At least that's our story. And then family's not here, so it's just us. I know it seems all over the place. Like I said, I could go into a lot more detail on things, but those are my take-home points that I'd like the world, the church, to know, is that autism is hard, comes with behavioral challenges, it comes with loudness, it comes with excitement, and it comes with lots of movement, it comes with lots of worry, it comes with lots of loneliness.
Yes.
But if you stick with us through it, I mean, it can be pretty awesome too.
You know, Millie, research has increased a lot, as we know, over the last several years. We have a long way to go. But the CDC, and I want to share this just for our listeners, the CDC estimates that at least 61 million Americans live with a disability, 26% of the population, 1 billion people worldwide. So you're talking about an enormous number of people impacted, but the CDC also suggests that those with invisible disabilities make up, depending on how you define it, between 70 and 90%. So it deepens the texture of what you're sharing with us, you know? So Donna, would you share with us and just kind of address that same question of, what do you wish everyone knew?
That is difficult. That is very, very difficult. Gavin most recently started to regress, being out of school and out of therapy for at least 2 months. He's actually been he's been aggressive, but it doesn't seem mean-spirited. It's kind of like he just will come by and tap, like hit me or punch me even, and then say time out and then keep on going. So it seems like there's some confusion too as far as what results from hitting, or we're working on it. But definitely I'm feeling the pain and the struggle from not being in school.
Yeah.
And not being in therapy. He just actually started therapy back last week. So I'm being hopeful. But yeah, that it's hard, that it's different. There's so many different symptoms and how they manifest. They can be very difficult to focus because my 10-year-old also has ADHD, and Gavin just came in with his tablet and he's watching Ubi. So I'm going to have to just remove him in just a minute.
Okay. So you mentioned something that I want to put in context for our listeners as well, because we'll have this as a resource, you know, ongoing. We're talking about COVID-19.
Yes.
And so some people It's all good. Some people who are thinking about, oh, it was such a nice family time, we really bonded with our children, and oh my, and we went on walks and we camped out in the backyard. I mean, this is the Facebook reel of the
Yes.
spring of 2020, right?
That's not it. That's not it at all.
That's not even close.
And
We saw that, Millie. And I think we have to realize that, again, it's like, that's what awareness is helping us with is, oh, wow. Okay, so that's not my experience. Right. Connie, so Valencia's 37, right?
Yes.
And so how would you reflect on this? Because one of the things that many have shared, and this is a topic for, all of us to be aware of, is the great anxiety that parents of children with disabilities feel about the future for their children when they're gone.
Yeah. I need to kind of piggyback on what Donna said, because I've had care for Valencia for so long. Her caregiver took her out of her day facility even before she had to, because she's caring for another person. And do you know, it took me a minute for me to dial in and say, wait a minute, how's she going to the grocery store? She needs somebody to watch the kids while she goes to the grocery store, because she used to have time that she no longer has. And I had to call her up. I said, Michelle, I'm so sorry. Call me. I will meet you at the grocery store. I'll watch the kids while you go into the grocery store and get groceries. But it's so many. Valencia, when I had her last week,
yep,
she is upset. She asked about her day facility. They experience changes like another child would. When Val and I were divorced, when he finally came to pick her up, she lit into him. She hit him. She was angry. And because Valencia is Down syndrome and autism as well, I also have behavior issues. So, finding the right medication, dosing, I'm there. I'm still there.
Yes.
Still there. Ask me what you asked me before, because I was, I wanted to go back. What did you say again? What did you ask me again?
No, you're right on the right spot, because
okay.
Because all this is connected.
Yeah.
Your laser focus on your daughter, and you recognize that you think about her, you have intuitions about her that no one else has.
And you know what, Don? I have another experience that mirrors others as well. I got ADD. I have a daughter who's even more severe. I have another child who's not autism, but she's on the spectrum of Asperger's. Yeah. I didn't even know all of this stuff for a long time, so sometimes it is overwhelming.
Yes.
And it's something we really have to pray about and pray for each other about, because I don't know, I guess I'll never stop being a mom. I'll never stop worrying about everybody, It's an endeavor. It's a journey. But this journey has humbled me. Every journey that I have taken, I can see what God's talking to me, telling me. He wants me to see something. Yep. If I'm somewhere where I can't see something, he'll bring me where I can see it.
Wow.
Through an experience or something like that. So, it has been a journey.
Okay, so before we move on, something that we've heard a little bit of a resounding theme, and that is that part of this can be some physical challenges, because as the children are growing, getting bigger, getting stronger, this is an issue. And one of the wonderful conversations we had recently with families, with family members with disabilities, is we talked about that some children with disabilities harm themselves. Some children with disabilities. And that there can be a real fear on the part of the parent to interface with, like what Brandon mentioned, the hospital system, the therapy system, the school system, and wondering, how is this going to be perceived if I have a child that harms themselves in aggression? How is this perceived? And Connie, you told us about an experience of having to take Valencia to ER. What did you feel when you were faced with the inevitability that you have to help your daughter because she has self-harmed, but there was some fear there?
Yeah. She had it was a Sunday, and she had a very bad episode. I mean, just even getting her home, I could barely drive because she was hitting me as I'm driving, and she's sitting in the back, so it was a traumatic day. But I took her home, went back to church to get my niece. I was so messed up, I couldn't even figure out, I should have taken everybody at one time, but my brain wasn't operating very well that day. And when I got back home, she looked like she had been in a boxing match. And but I had to take her. I didn't even hesitate, but it did go through my mind.
Yeah.
What are they going to think?
Yeah.
I was hoping that they would say, if she had done this, I don't think she would have brought her in, Yeah. But I don't know. But they figured it out. I told them what happened, and they believed me, and they knew that Valencia had done this to herself. So yeah, it is a conundrum that we find ourselves in. Yeah. And that's why medical support and medical care, people who know what they're doing, and people who are like on cutting edge. We're also concerned about too much medication. That's the other thing that happens. So finding the right medication and the right dosage, and the rest of the support that you need, psychological and every other kind of support that there could be. But yeah, it has been a journey.
Yes. So Jennifer, can you speak to this a little bit, serving as a professional in this field? Can you speak to this a little bit about some of the inevitable tension that you've seen in families as they've interfaced with like education systems and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I think every family is different, their backgrounds, where they've come from, what experiences they have, whether positive or negative. And also, just the school system that you're with, what they bring, whether positive or negative. So, I think there's fear on both sides. There's fear of school systems and the legalities of everything, of getting sued and, all of that brings.
Yeah.
And then there's fear on the side of the parents who are struggling to find what's best for their child, know what's best for their child, and I've sat in IEP meetings where it's hard. It's hard to know sometimes what's best. And, you may agree, you may not agree with the whole team's decision, and it's tough to be on that side sometimes. It's a huge blessing to be able to work with these kids and to see the progress. And sometimes you wish you could do more. And when you have over 40 children on your caseload and you can't, it's a struggle. And, it's a struggle every day to want to do your best. And sometimes you have to realize that you are doing your best when you, with what you have.
Yeah.
And be able to help with your family too. So
Donna mentioned that her son has been able in the last few weeks to return to therapy. How have you handled therapy during COVID-19?
It's been a challenge. I actually started 2 days before COVID, before schools closed. I started back to work for maternity leave. 2 days.
I'm kidding.
So thankfully, the lady who was there was wonderful and gave me wonderful notes about how everybody was doing.
Hmm.
But I think the kids that suffered the most were the kids with autism and with other significant developmental disabilities, because they weren't the ones that I could get on a Zoom call with as well.
And I want everyone to hear that.
As much as, I could do, I tried as much as I could, talking to the parents and giving them materials. But, like Donna said, she's a single mom.
Yes.
She's working, and they don't have the time to sit down with, a lot of them don't have the time to sit down with their kids and spend an hour or whatever doing these lessons or doing these activities that I send home. So that was the hardest part.
I want to capture that. I really do. That's so insightful, Jennifer. Your unique position in this call is extremely important. Because I think, to Donna's point, she referenced what wonderful support she's had, right? Connie mentioned, like this, like someplace good, someplace not so good. When Millie was describing, like driving a minimum of 1 hour each way. I mean, that was the starting point, right? That's not traffic or no traffic, right? That's just the starting point. And then on top of that, to have something like COVID-19 hit, where, you're talking months out, right? So I want everyone to capture that and really process that. Brandon, I want to ask you a question here. What kind of therapist was the most helpful for you? What kind of therapist was the most helpful?
It's hard because the older I got, the less the therapists I saw, and the more like actual doctors I saw. Like,
okay.
Dude, that's when I was going through like the surgery phase of things. So like the surgery really helped. But the therapist when I was in elementary school, they put me in splints and casts, and then turned the casts into splints. And but which I don't remember all of them by name.
Yeah.
So
was that difficult for you to transition from one to the next, or did it just feel like a natural progression for who you were from birth?
I never really had like a huge attachment to any therapist because they were always like rotating me like within the company. It was like, oh, I'd see this person this week and this person that week.
Okay.
So,
okay. Yeah. What about for you? What was your journey into employment like?
I'd already I'd already figured out how to like type with one hand. So like typing, 100 words a minute is like nothing to me now. It's like, but not literally, but.
Are you bragging?
No. No. But like I have like so many life hacks that I put at my disposal to do certain things, and so I employ all those in my job as a graphic designer. So because I'm at the computer all day. So, but no one ever asked me if I could do a job or couldn't do a job. There's like, what does your portfolio look like? You know, so
That's very helpful. Jennifer, you laughed when he mentioned life hacks and typing.
Yep.
Yep. Similar? Okay. All right. Now let's do this. In the time remaining, I want to come back this way. And Donna, we're going to start with you this time. And Millie, not to put you on the spot, but you'll be next. Let's talk about surprises. Surprises along the way on this journey. What are some things that surprised you? You know, you didn't know that you would have 3 sons on the spectrum.
Correct.
So that has to rank as kind of a pretty big surprise, right?
Definitely.
But what are some surprises that you've encountered along the way that you would want people to also know about?
Especially having more than one, that I've gotten funny looks from people while one is off doing one thing, and then maybe Gavin's in the car screaming, or we've definitely had to kind of pick and choose. So if we are there, it's because we have to be there, and then that would be nice if people could understand that. It's like, I don't really want to be here with him screaming his head off, but I kind of have to be. That surprises, there are all kind of different symptoms, and Don. Okay, well, one big surprise was that Gavin, who is 7, would, what they say, call elope a lot. You may have even seen him run through the church on occasion or two, and he is lightning fast.
Yes.
That, I think, one of the most difficult parts. I remember being at a baseball game. Gavin and Xavier's playing baseball, and I had to make sure he wasn't fighting with the little kids in the dugout. Steven's fine, but he wanted me to come see him. Yep. And Gavin decided he wanted to run away. I lost Gavin for 30 minutes in a big, huge park.
Wow.
Terrifying. Yes, terrifying. I guess, not even I guess, I just know God has been watching out for us, because there's no way he would still be here if he wasn't. A teacher happened to find him. She happens to work with autistic children. She happened to just hold him and call the police to let him know that she had him. And then I call, and they're like, "Oh, he's okay. He's here with this woman."
That's amazing.
But there's always some kind of surprise behavior, it seems, that can be attributed to, well, Xavier, like I said, has ADHD and the autism. Yeah. But every day is just different. You can't predict it. Okay.
Now, I didn't know you were going to say that, but once again, Donna, you've given just a nugget that is so important for everyone to hear, because so much of parenting is the imagination of predictability.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You have to let go. Yeah.
And then for other parents to hear you say, "Oh, no, the predictability is out the window. The most predictable thing is the unpredictability."
Yes.
Again, I want people to hear that. And you also said something, Donna, that I also want to take in myself and to hear, is to be able, for others to be able to say, this is difficult for her, because the tendency is to interpret it from their position. This is difficult for us. We wish that child wasn't screaming in this restaurant.
Yes.
But as Dr. Martin Luther King said, there's no movement forward without empathy. Mm-hmm. Right? So to start exercising empathy and putting someone's self in another person's experience, it's extremely important, right? Okay. And I'm hearing that from you, and I think that's vital for people to just kind of reorient a little bit, and just say, "Hey, you think it's tough? Believe me, I'm feeling that, right? Well,
There was-
Millie, oh, go ahead.
Let's say there was a photo that someone sent me with two parents on the couch laughing like hysterically, and it said an autistic parent's reaction when a regular parent says that they're busy. Because I didn't
Yes.
mention that part either. Gavin goes to 3 therapies every week, so that's something else that yes, but definitely that is difficult. That it's.
Yes.
I really believe God has made me an example because, and I've heard that from teachers also, because it's just not likely to have 3 autistic children.
That's right.
And yeah, we're just very, very blessed, very fortunate.
Okay, now I'm going to turn to Millie because one of our previous conversations, Millie, you talked about that sleep thing. Not being dependable and regular, right? But Millie, why don't you share with us in these final moments here of our time together, share with us a little bit about surprises that you too have encountered.
Well, Donna, I just had to get up because Brady just escaped out of the house into the front yard onto the street. So I had to find my husband who was out back to go get him out front.
There you go.
We also have basically alarmed every door in the house. It has to be set every night. The Woodies actually gave me permission to feel okay about turning the lock on Brady's bedroom door to put it on the outside for his safety and so I could sleep. It made me feel so good. They're like, Millie, it's okay. It's okay to do that.
This is another parent who is experiencing life in similar frame as you are.
Right. So surprises, I'll get to the sleep. But something that I wished I would have said earlier for that first question, but also fits into this category is everything is escalated and heightened. Like going to a well child checkup with Brady, it takes now 5 people, adults, to help me hold him down so they can check his ears. To give him his flu vaccine. I have to make special arrangements to have a private room, and they have to have extra people there. Dentist appointments, we have to find one that's willing to have a child with special needs, especially behavioral special needs. I mean, he's papoosed still in a thing, and I still have to hold him down with a dental hygienist. It's emotional having to hold your child down.
Yes.
I used to go every 6 weeks with Brady to practice going to the dentist, so I understand busy. We did hippotherapy with the horses. We got grant money to do that. Feeding therapy, teaching Brady how to eat. He eats very basic 12 foods. So, I mean, I have to teach him sensory-wise how to swallow these things, how to chew them, things that he doesn't prefer. I'm teaching him how to use a spoon. Potty training took years. He wasn't potty trained until he was 5, which is a blessing. It's huge that he's potty trained. I'm not diminishing that, but I was on for potty training for 3 years.
Wow.
Just everything is, it's a huge deal when you get there though. So I feel like we know this amount of joy that is hard for other parents to experience. Because when we get it, other parents just want to like high five each other, It feels good. Sleep. Donna, Connie, I know you all understand, but Brady does not sleep well. Never has. And at least for a while, it was 5 nights a week. He was up at 2 a.m, ready to go. And that was so wearing on me. To the point of anxiety, and mentally, I felt unstable. I had explained in our last conversation that there was one night recently, this has happened multiple nights, but one night recently that I felt I was so tired. It was night 4 of about 3 hours of sleep for me. I'm in school full-time, working, homeschooling, Brady's home, you're going crazy. And I had to wake up David to come because I had to remove myself because I thought that I might hurt Brady. Yes. I just thought I was going to squeeze his arms. that I may be a little nervous having everybody here, just FYI. Those kinds of things are hard to say out loud, it's hard for other people to hear that don't have the same reference of experiences that we do. And like I said, Donna, hats off. I'll help you. You tell me what you need. David will stay here. I'll come to you, girl. I'll come to you. David will stay here. I'll come to you.
There you go.
Awesome.
But I do want to say thank you, Millie, for what you just said, because you did share that with us in a previous conversation. And that was unbelievably meaningful, because I think it's very hard for people who are, this is the lived experience, to have anyone that they can say, have you ever felt this way? Is there something wrong with me as a mom, dad, as a professional, right? Is there something wrong with me that I'm feeling this level of anxiety? Right. And for you to say it and to share it, it gives permission for other people to then finally unburden themselves and say, me too. And I think that's just vital. So I can't thank you enough, just like I want to say thank you to Connie for sharing the experience about the leaving church and Valencia's struggle and then the ER visit. See, this is what people with living in this circumstance are facing all the time. I've heard all of you on the call, but as well as others in our very special circle of friends talk about 24/7, right? It never stops. There's never a break. And some of those that are going to join us for the other conversations in the series are actually going to talk about respite care. So some of our other conversationalists that are joining us for this, that's part of the questions that they're going to address is respite care. You have also, many of you have mentioned the financial part of it, and we will have a special conversation devoted just to the advocacy. We're going to be joined in that by a person whose professional life started in teaching children with disabilities and now works for the government in that arena. And she will also be able to help us with some of that. So these conversations are going to be priceless for people that are walking this as a lived experience. And so what I want to say to you tonight is thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing in this. And these are the beginning conversations. There will be many, many more. And I just want to thank you so much for participating in this tonight and sharing with us. And is there anything anyone wants to say as a closing statement tonight?
I do.
Yes.
I wanted to bring up one other thing. Sorry, it just kind of came into my mind, but it feels really important to say out loud.
Yes.
So we have a typical child with Briley, and then we have our sweet Brady. And I just want to talk about Briley for a minute.
Yes.
Because it's hard on him too. And it's the best thing for him too. Like he has the most tender, compassionate, he will fight for anybody who is marginalized point of view. And I just think it's an important conversation probably for another time, but to talk about the siblings.
Okay.
And that, he has started expressing because we want him to express. Like the other, last year during soccer season, Brady was very loud and was throwing a tantrum and actually escaped onto the field during a tournament game. And he verbalized to us that it was very embarrassing. And he felt badly. He didn't want to tell us. And he actually cried for feeling that way. And so it's important because we try so hard to frame this conversation of your brother. He's different, but he's beautiful. He's in God's image. And I think he's sometimes afraid to say how he's feeling too. Like I was just afraid to say I was filled with those moments of rage.
Yes.
And sometimes he wants those moments to just look typical.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe that's another conversation that maybe is another time about siblings and what that might look like for them.
We'll do it. Other heads nodding. See there? So I think we have our next conversation for maybe this group, right? Lined out there. Well, I do want to say thank you all. Thank you so much. And what I would ask you to do is think a little bit about what's left on the table, knowing that there's a series of 4 conversations, because an activist, who is on the autism spectrum, Ryan Lee, we do have a conversation just with him. And he is advocating and sharing from his own perspective, which is, thank you so much for this. And my prayer is that this is one of many conversations, including the one that Millie just launched for us.
Love first, I know. Lord, take control. Love first in my soul. Lord, take control.